Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our podcast on the economic term of demand. In this section, we wanted to accomplish two things. One, we wanted to talk about some of the many factors that may influence and change the demand side of our supply and demand equation. Additionally, we wanted to give you guys the opportunity to look at a couple examples and see if you could think through them and how these items would change and impact demand. So now what affects that demand? We've kind of been hinting at some of the factors that go into this idea before, where all of a sudden something gets changed in the economic structure and all of a sudden people feel like they need to have that stupid Furby doll or they need the rainbow loom. And so what are some of these factors that cause changes in demand? And so as we look through these, many of these are very sociological. It's like this push from society to fit a certain mold or to look a certain way or to have a certain thing. And so as we look at these, many of them are definitely economic because they deal with money. They always deal with scarcity and choices around that scarcity, but also consider just how much society plays into this. And so the first factor that could affect demand is a person's income. If I'm not making very much at the beginning of my career, my demand for a car is going to be pretty simple. I need a box with 4 wheels and doors that's going to get me to and from my job. But there's the potential that as I earn more, something is going to drive me to want to have something more, to have the nicer car, to have even the nicer car. And think about it, like if you're making your first job's wages and you barely have enough to survive, you need food first, a fancy schmancy car second. But if you start to make more because you've been on the job longer or you're getting raises, maybe you can afford the food you want and need, and you can afford a nicer car. And so sometimes income level can change people's taste and demand for certain products. Now, for some people, if they're not car people, they won't give a crap how much money they have, and their demand for a car isn't going to change at all. They could be making $200,000 and they still want to drive the AMC Pacer or the Ford Pinto. It just doesn't matter to them. That's their criteria that we've talked about in previous podcasts. But sometimes the more people make, the more they feel they need certain items. Another thing that can change people's ideas of demand is just general sociological taste and preference. If we go back through what has sold at popular levels throughout the years, certain things don't get sold as much anymore. For example, in the 80s, it was the Zubaz pants you see up there. Kind of baggy, lightweight, weird printed pants that seemed like weightlifters used to wear a lot. They looked like pajama pants in really weird patterns. Nobody would be caught dead wearing those now because tastes have changed. If you're going to the gym, you don't wear those things. They look stupid. Right in the middle, you get parachute pants. Big in the 80s just because certain singing groups used to wear these things. And during the 80s, demand for parachute pants was high. I remember growing up and begging my mom for a pair of these. I need parachute pants because they're so cool and everybody's got them. And I'm kind of geeky, and if I could get these pants, I'd be so cool. The demand was high because in the 80s, the taste was parachute pants with zippers. Now, no one's going to wear them. The popped collar thing, very 80s. The leg warmer thing, big in the 80s, not so much now. Except, of course, if you're a dancer for whatever reason, dancers still tend to wear leg warmers. But tastes and preference change. Down in the bottom right, you see McDonald's. McDonald's came about in the 50s. Exceptionally popular as one of the first fast food restaurants out there. It enjoyed a very long history of being very, very popular as a fast food restaurant. But as we're making this in 2015, tastes have changed. The menu that we're seeing McDonald's have now is fundamentally different than it was back in the 90s, 80s, back in the 50s. We're seeing more potentially healthy items, more salads, trying to decrease the amount of fat in certain things because people overall don't want the same things from their fast food. They want healthier options. They want it quick, they want it cheap, but they want it a little bit healthier. So McDonald's has been forced to change because the demand for certain items has changed based on taste and preference. Another factor that could change demand is the price of a related product. And here you see 3 pairs of related products. You have like the name brand, and then you have some sort of generic or house brand of the same thing. So for example, you may really want a cola. Well, Coke is the #1 selling brand, but oh my goodness, I don't have enough for a 2-liter of Coke, but I do have enough for the generic cola. And so if you really want that taste all of a sudden, but you don't have the money, maybe your demand changes. I really want Coke, but I just can't do it, so my demand shifts, and I start to pay for the house brand or the generic one. Now, of course, they may taste different, and maybe their packaging doesn't last as long, and maybe they're of inferior quality, but perhaps because of the price of the cheaper item, and you don't have enough for the name brand thing, then all of a sudden you find yourself buying the cheaper one. Your demand has changed because of the price of things that are basically the same. They're very similar. So if I can get one that's almost the same but a little bit cheaper, why not? Demand can also change because of people's expectations about a product. So for example, when the iPad came out, a lot of people that are techno junkies were all over it, saying this is the greatest thing ever. And they demanded it, they needed it, they felt this pull to purchase this idea of this tablet thing that you could touch. It was too big to be a phone, but it wasn't big enough or powerful enough or had the features to be a laptop. But they thought, man, that's super cool. It'll totally find a niche. And so demand for those things was skyrocketing before they were even sold. But then you also have people who say, well, what's the point? I don't think I could find a use for this. It seems really silly. Why wouldn't I just go over to my laptop and look things up? Or my phone? The phones are getting bigger. It's almost the same size as these iPad minis. What's the point? And so if consumers have certain expectations about things, like they expect it to be really, really cool and great, then demand might improve and increase. If they think it's going to be stupid, or if they've heard bad things about it in the reviews, or if they just don't see a market for it, then the demand for them is going to go down. Another way that demand can be manipulated is through the idea of the number of buyers of something. If there is a massive amount of supply of something, then everybody in the world can get this product. So the demand isn't very high. The impulse, the rushedness to go get it isn't that high. I don't need it today. I'll just get it tomorrow. There's going to be plenty out there. So what's the big rush? The demand isn't as nerve-wracking. But all of a sudden you start seeing things like limited, exclusive, today only, for 4 hours only, a flash sale. And all of a sudden, demand gets cranked up because it seems like they're manipulating the potential number of buyers. Not everyone can get this car because it's limited. Not everyone can get this Elvis plate with hand-placed rhinestones because it's a limited edition. And so all of a sudden, the number of buyers has been manipulated, and all of a sudden, the demand goes through the roof for people who feel they need that product. Well, I was going to wait till tomorrow to get my Elvis plate with hand-placed rhinestones, but if there's only 50 left, I better get it. And I think that I better get it today. So think about the demand shift in the following situations. Will demand go up or go down in each one of these? So I'll look at number one, the demand for cars when people get a tax refund after they've paid their taxes in April. All of a sudden they find out the government is giving them some money back. What's going to happen to the demand for cars? Is it going to go up all of a sudden where people feel they need to have that car? Or is it going to go down? The reasonable thought is that demand for cars at that time is going to go up because all of a sudden people find extra money in their pocket and they were thinking, well, I needed a new car before, but I didn't want to get one. But now if I've got $2,000 extra dollars, hey, that could be a nice down payment. I need that car. And all of a sudden people start buying cars with their tax refund. How about the demand for gloves after the first snowstorm? Is that going to shift up or shift down? And the obvious answer is that the demand for gloves is going to go up after the first snowstorm. Now, ideally, people saw it coming and they'd gone to the store to get their gloves ahead of time, but we forget, we don't think about it. It's Colorado, it's 60 degrees one day, it's 20 the next. We just didn't get the new gloves. All of a sudden, the front comes through, storm drops 16 feet of snow, and we need gloves. But you know what? So does everybody else in Denver. And so the demand for gloves shoots through the roof because the need has changed, and it's changed in a way where everybody feels they've got to have it right now. So demand goes up. How about this one? The demand for hot dogs when the price of hot dog buns rises. Is the demand going to increase or decrease? And in this case, logically, the demand for hot dogs is going to go down when this happens. People are going to look at it and go, wait a second. It used to cost me $1 to get a whole package of hot dog buns, and that would be perfect for my new barbecue. But if all of a sudden the price of the buns jumps to like $10 a package, you're going to skip it. And then if you're going to skip the buns, a lot of people are just going to skip the hot dogs altogether and just say, forget it. I'm going to go with a hamburger or something that doesn't require that kind of bun. How about this one? The demand for gasoline today when people expect prices to fall tomorrow. What's going to happen to the demand for gas? And again, I think in this case, the demand for gas today is going to go down. If I know, or if I think that gas prices are going to go down tomorrow because you've paid attention to the trends that gas prices tend to fall during the middle of the week and they tend to go up on the weekends, if it's Tuesday, I'm guessing that the trend is going to continue and gas prices will go down tomorrow. So it's Tuesday. Can't I wait one more day? And if I go one more day, I could save a couple cents a gallon. So what happens to the demand for gas today? It goes down. I'll wait. I can hang out 24 hours. My car will make it to work, and then I'll just buy it tomorrow on the way home, save myself a couple bucks, and call it good. So if we expect prices to go down, if we expect that kind of change, then it changes the demand from the consumer's end. So that's about it in terms of part 2 of our demand podcast. Again, just a couple things. Remember that demand is from the consumer's side, so the person who is potentially willing to spend money on something. And think about all the different factors that may come into play that could have an impact on demand. It could be as simple as society has changed its taste for a certain thing. It could be that comparable goods are cheaper or a different quality, and so somebody might not want brand A when they can easily get brand B, that kind of thing. How does the consumer's taste, desires, willingness to spend money change? That is going to be demand. As always, if you have any questions, please bring those into class. Otherwise, thanks, and we'll see you soon.